Well, welcome everybody. Good morning. My name is Errin Haines and I'm editor-at-large at the 19th. If you are not familiar, we are a nonprofit independent newsroom focused on the intersection of gender, politics, and policy. If you are in here, that means that you are as thrilled as I am to be in conversation today with beauty rebel Lindy West, AKA Shrill one. Listen, this feels like a really great way to close out an amazing week in Aspen and to really talk about an issue that could not feel more timely for me. Together, Lindy and I are going to talk about how really the marginalized in our society are redefining what it means to be beautiful, why that matters, and frankly, why we should all care and want to do something about the ugliness that is really such a part of our society today. So before we get into it, let me just give a few moments for Lindy to bask in the glow of her beautiful and amazing bio. Lindy West is a contributing opinion writer for the New York Times and author of the definitive 100% objective guide to modern cinema, as well as the New York Times bestselling memoir Shrill, Notes from a Loud Woman, and the essay collection The Witches Are Coming. Her work has also appeared in This American Life, The Guardian, Cosmopolitan, GQ, Vulture, Jezebel, and others, and she is co-founder of the reproductive rights destigmatization campaign, #ShoutYourAbortion. Lindy is also a writer and executive producer on Shrill, the Hulu hilarious comedy adapted from her memoir, and she is based in Seattle. Lindy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so here we go. Look, we were just talking, we are only a week out from the seismic Dobbs decision that reversed the landmark Roe versus Wade ruling, ending federal protections for abortion access. We know that women's bodies are political. We know that beauty is political. So, I mean, I just want to start by asking you how you are thinking about this context, especially in the context of our post-Roe reality.
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. Like, it did feel a little bit disorienting to come here and be like, okay, let's talk about beauty and like the stuff that I usually talk about, which is like being fat and like, I don't know, wearing clothes. By the way, this is a skort in case anyone's nervous.
LOL.
Yeah. But I was thinking about it in this context, and what I kept coming back to was the fact that beauty, the concept of beauty does two things. First of all, it's a means of control, especially of the marginalized. And secondly, it's also it's the metric by which we create a hierarchy of value of people, of human beings. And broadly speaking, creating that hierarchy and maintaining it is, like even the concept of a hierarchy of human value is at the root of every problem that we have. And so, yeah, I mean, I like thinking about not just subverting beauty standards or rejecting them, but reclaiming them, taking them, doing whatever we want with them is actually, it feels very empowering to me right in this moment and important to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, I think a lot of what also has to loom over this beauty conversation right now is the pandemic, right? So, we know the pandemic kind of upended notions of beauty, certainly even how we prioritize beauty. I mean, this is really kind of my first time getting dressed this week in quite a while. I don't know about all of you. You all look lovely, so shout out to you. I'm just wondering how your relationship to beauty has changed in this pandemic. And also, I mean, do you think there's going to be a new normal on the other side of this?
I hope so in certain ways. Like, I love that, like, just if anything good comes out of the pandemic, it's that I feel like millions of people have realized that they can reject high heels for the rest of their lives. I mean, I'm like sort of wearing a heel, but
you are wearing a heel.
But it's a trick. It's like really a flat if you look at, anyway. I promise I'm not a hypocrite. I mean, obviously, like we can wear high heels if we want to. Yeah. I'm not trying to control people. But yeah, I mean, I do feel like there was certainly, I mean, I don't want to put some positive spin on all of us being confined to our homes and millions of women being ripped out of the workforce to stay home and care for children. But I do feel like there was, in a certain way, like an ease of pressure, like going out and being constantly seen and watched and surveilled and judged, and it's very dehumanizing in a certain way. Like it grinds you down.
Having to be put together, having to hold it all together. I mean, obviously that went away in these last 2 years. I feel like for so many of us, and it was okay.
And I mean, it's certainly a reclaiming of time.
Yeah.
Like not having to spend like 2 hours getting ready because you just are going to be on Zoom. Right. I mean, that's great. I feel like there's definitely, for me at least in the pandemic, there was a reorganizing of priorities and also a sort of crystallization of what's actually important to me and what's not, because we're plunged into this terrifying situation. But also paradoxically, I feel like I got closer to myself and my feelings about like fashion and clothes in the pandemic. Like I, for the first time, started like posting my outfit every day and being like really thinking about like just wearing like weird shit that I like because I don't see anyone and and like, oh my God, nothing matters.
Yeah. And you weren't,
because we live in hell.
And you were, well, that part. I mean, and there is the reality that we're used to being viewed. We're used to somebody weighing in on our appearance, and that really didn't necessarily get to happen other than if you lived with somebody else. My dog doesn't care what I have on any given day, so that didn't change. But I wonder if you can talk about, we were having a conversation about kind of an unintended consequence for you in the pandemic that made you kind of rethink your relationship to beauty. Do you know what I'm talking about, or do I have to spell it out?
I don't remember.
You were telling me that you...
What did I do?
Got skinnier.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, this is a really complicated thing to talk about, but people have been coming at me on Instagram about it. So just through boredom, I started running in the pandemic, and it like changed my body in certain ways that was kind of alienating for like fat women who follow me. I mean, I'm obviously still like very fat, but it was this like, it felt like this sort of betrayal to certain people that like I had gone on a diet, and really all that happened was I got orthotics so I could walk. And then I just was bored and I was stuck in my house and I started running. And it gave me this like sort of strange perspective about, I mean, this is kind of a fat people in-group conversation, so I hesitate to get into it. But there's this way, but maybe like if you're a thin person who feels inspired by fat people's bravery or something, you can think about this. There's this way where I realized that a lot of people, fat people and thin people, wanted me to like stay fat and be this thing that represented something to them versus just like being a person living in my body with its natural changes. And it was a really hard thing to navigate. It was really painful. Like, I don't want to betray my community, but I also don't want to not listen to my body and not live my own life and let my body do what it does. So it was kind of scary, but the hardest thing that I learned from that was that people are so much nicer to you. With every fucking pound you lose, people treat you better. And I'm still a fat person, but I am a less fat person, and my experience moving through the world is exponentially kinder, more accommodating, more friendly, and it's disgusting. So I would urge you to all think about how you treat the fat people in your lives, strangers that you encounter on the street, what assumptions you make about them, how you think they deserve to be treated. And this comes back to everything else too. I mean, I guess I'm allowed to soapbox because it's my talk, but like,
you are totally allowed.
This is why things like beauty standards are relevant. Like, fat people face hiring discrimination, huge medical discrimination when you talk about like fertility conversations with fat people. If we're talking about abortion, emergency contraceptives are less effective for fat people. No one cares. I mean, there's all these issues. So anyway,
or like even just trying to get care and having somebody comment on your weight or acting like your weight is part of that conversation when it's like, hello, I'm not here for that. Actually.
Well, I mean, yeah, part of my weight fluctuation was I hurt my ankle and I went to the doctor and she was like, oh, you should exercise more. And then it wasn't till like 2 years later that I actually got someone to listen to me, and I went to a podiatrist, and he was like, oh, you have like a horrific bone spur.
Oh, wow.
And then gave me orthotics, and suddenly I could, because I had been immobilized. Anyway, so I'm rambling, but wow, it's very dark when you lose a little bit of weight and realize that people like you better, and they think that you have more value and you're more worthwhile as a person. I'm the same person. And oh my God, what are the rest of you experiencing? Because people are being this nice to me and I'm delighted and I'm still fat. I'm like, oh my God. Like, it feels like that. There's like an episode of, I always think about this episode of like Growing Pains or something, where there's like
We're
little.
going way back here. Wow.
I just always remember.
I'm like looking at. I'm like, yeah, y'all know what growing pains is.
It was like the little kid is like mad that she doesn't get to stay up late, and then she has this vision of like what her parents are probably doing after she goes to bed, and she thinks they're like riding ponies and stuff around the living room. I'm like, is that what you? Or you know what I mean? Or like that Eddie Murphy sketch where he's goes out in whiteface, and it's like, wait, this is what.
Right.
How white people treat each other?
And it's crazy because, like, I mean, what's crazy about that is that you didn't. That wasn't the point. Like, you were bored, like you said. You were just trying to do something. This is an unintended consequence, and yet this is a reaction that you were totally not expecting. Yeah.
That's the thing.
Do better, people.
That's the thing. I mean, we're all a little discombobulated by the pandemic and the Supreme Court. At least I am. So that's all the stuff that's churning around in here. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if we can get into the way back pre-pandemic machine, I'm thinking about just the idea that Shrill came out in the spring of 2016. So before Trump is elected, before the Me Too movement, right? And I do feel like there's been this reckoning underway around notions of beauty that you were really at the forefront of kind of the latest iteration of where we are now. I wonder if you can just talk about what has been unleashed as far as how women, LGBTQ folks, people of color, people with disabilities, like how are they thinking about and redefining beauty? Do you feel like we're at a tipping point here?
I mean, it's hard to declare a tipping point when everything feels like we're being dragged backwards. But yeah, I mean, I certainly do feel like there has been a mass movement from all different groups of people claiming their bodies. Like, when people criticize me for like posting selfies on Instagram, I'm like, I'm sorry, no one ever wanted to like look at a picture of me or tell me I was pretty my whole life. Like, I'm gonna take pictures of myself, own that image, create that image, and post it if it makes me feel like, you know, it's this feeling of like sort of defiant agency that I definitely do see. I mean, like, certainly my social media feeds are absolutely defined by like queer people creating new notions of beauty and like, I don't know, yeah, I mean, I feel like, I mean, I don't know the answer. Like, what would the tipping point be?
Yeah.
I mean, I
seriously, and like you said, I mean, just feeling like there's progress, but then there's also backlash to that progress, right? I mean, like literally, we end Pride Month yesterday, and now here it is July 1st, and things like the Don't Say Gay bill are in effect as of July 1, right? So it's like, we can celebrate, these new notions of beauty. And then, but now, as of today, at least in one state in this country, it's not, that is not a beauty that we're not even allowed to address.
And so you're not allowed to address institutionally. So we still exist as individuals and, more importantly, as communities. And I do feel like, absolutely, that's the only direction that we can go in every sphere, is move toward community in terms of abortion care, self-managed abortion, beauty standards, creating our own images and defending them, and supporting each other, taking care of each other, promoting each other's work. I mean, there are all these ways, in which we do still have power, even if it's not institutional power, and even if institutions are coming down harder than ever, because I mean, it is a backlash, which means that we were making progress and we were moving and we were very, very threatening to power structures. So that's encouraging in a really dark, way, but there's just so much more work to do. It's hard not to feel exhausted. I mean, like we were already, I remember, when I was working at like Jezebel in 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
I remember writing, I think it must have been 2014. I remember writing, I think about this a lot, writing we would have to do like end of the year wrap up posts. There's all these things you have to do in blogs, whatever. Just feed the blog. And I remember being asked to write a wrap up post, and it was like, was 2014 the most horrible year of all time? Like, I remember being like, ugh, nothing could fucking get worse then. Like, I already felt like at the end of my rope. There were so many things were so bad. And then now it's almost 10 years later.
Yeah.
And obviously it can literally get worse every day.
Yeah.
so I forget where I was going. I was going to end on something hopeful, but
no, you know what? I will help you.
Okay, great.
Because you started talking about something that I do think we are seeing in this moment that we've seen in these past few years, especially since Shrill has come out, and that is the idea of beauty through community, right? Yeah. The idea that community is beautiful and that people are finding each other and being supported and feeling seen and affirmed in community. Talk about the value of that, why that matters, and particularly why that matters with what you're thinking about in this moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's the only thing that matters. Institutions are corrupt. The Democrats, obviously, like, Republicans can go in the trash. Democrats, I'm not sure what they're doing. There just seems to be no sort of will to save us, maybe just to fundraise. And corporations are demonic. And all we have is ourselves and each other. And you should all get and buy and read my friend Angela Garbez's new book, which is called Essential Labor. Mm-hmm. And she writes a lot about this, about the way that communities coalesced, especially at the very beginning of COVID, where systems were all of a sudden shut down, and people came together in really beautiful ways, and ways that we're not used to doing in this hyper-individualistic society, where people were going and talking to their neighbors and finding out if there were like elderly people who needed food. People were forming pods and they were taking care of each other's children and educating each other's children and creating these larger family units. And it was this sort of small, strange utopia inside of this dystopia. And I feel like some of us had a lot of hope that maybe that energy would continue. Yeah. And of course, systems and institutions figured out ways to instantly squash it, but we're all still here. Maybe we've been lured out of those, sort of community care models by the old bad ways. But that doesn't mean we can't go back and we can't do that. And in fact, we must. We have to. No one else is taking care of us except for us. And corporations aren't going to save you. Just because Dick's Sporting Goods will fly you to get an abortion, that's not freedom, I think the more we allow ourselves to be like lulled into complacency and lured away from really organic ideas of community, the less free we're going to get, and the more danger we'll be in. So like, it's the only answer. Essential labor, you should go by.
I was going to say, thank you for mentioning essential labor, because it really is, it is a reminder about the beauty in caregiving.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? That I think that a lot of people have lost sight of, that they are already forgetting about as we kind of begin to emerge back out into the world. So
like I feel like when I think about, a partisan divide, it's care. Mm. It's, the right has no sense of care. And not that the left, again, I'm not thrilled with the Dems right now, but like the right is terrifying. And there truly is no sense of the fact that you could say you don't care if 12-year-olds have to give birth, mm-hmm. or women have to die with an ectopic pregnancy. Like the fact that none of that moves you because you're so siloed, it truly is the opposite of community. These are people who care about community, but not in a real sense, in a sort of selfish, compartmentalized sense, where they care about themselves and their children, and money and power. Anyway, okay, I've gone wild on the Republicans again. But no, truly, like care is the thing that I keep coming back to, and it's a thing that became really clear in the pandemic, what it means to take care of each other.
Yeah. Well, listen, something that we obviously believe in very deeply, both of us, both me in my role at the 19th, and you as somebody who has a memoir and has started Shout Your Abortion, the beauty in story, in people's stories. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about how that it has been beautiful and empowering to watch just in so many different areas. Obviously, I think in this current moment, we're thinking a lot about the beauty in those stories. We are writing so much, hearing so much from the people that are being impacted by this decision, people who are sharing stories that they had never shared about themselves, about their lives, that is helping them to get through this moment and is helping people to destigmatize, just as your organization is attempting to do. So talk a little bit about why sharing stories is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I think obviously storytelling, personal narrative is not.
An act of rebellion for people.
It is, yeah. I mean, and it's not the end, it's not the finish line.
No.
But it's part of the process for sure. And I think, especially in a cultural climate where people just lie. The discourse around critical race theory is just lying. It's just lying. They're lying in service of lying. It's like they're lying about what critical race theory is so that they can implement curriculum that lies to children, that makes up a false history to make white children feel powerful. So every moment that a person can be vulnerable and tell the real truth, it moves the needle a tiny bit. I mean, it's humanizing. I feel like as a fat person, my humanity is flattened into nothing. As a woman, obviously, or as a person who can get pregnant, obviously my humanity has recently been obliterated. And I think that it's so easy for people to make up their own stories about who we are. And regarding abortion, the reason I started Shout Your Abortion is because I realized that I grew up in a progressive city, and no one ever talked about abortion, except in the abstract. Like, oh yeah, abortion needs to be safe, legal, and rare, whatever, which is a horrific slogan, and a very self-defeating slogan because it implies that we're doing something wrong. That it needs to be rare. Why does it need to be rare? How about it needs to be the exact number of people that need abortions? And we've constantly, and this is the thing that the left does, constantly on the defensive, and then we just get pushed back and back and back. Like, why have we ever bought into this idea that abortion needs to be rare? It's because we caved to this stigma where you're not supposed to talk about your abortion. And I'm not saying that everyone, I don't think we should have to talk about our abortions, because it's fucking private, but when no one talks about it, or no, that's not true. When the only people talking about it are anti-abortion activists, they're the ones who get to define the entire narrative. And then we have to say, oh, no, okay, you're right. We know it's kind of it's kind of murder, but can we still please have it? Like, we know it's really bad and we're really sorry, but can we please keep it? How the fuck are we supposed to win on that? How are we, and we didn't win. We lost. And I heard a man say yesterday, I'm so mad about this. Oh. Sorry. At the Roe Dobbs panel, well, there's two things that I'm mad, one thing that I'm mad about is I heard a man say on the panel that the Dems had a chance to codify Roe in 1992 and they didn't because the progressive wing pushed too hard and asked for too much and it alienated the moderates. Sounds like that was the moderates' fault. Sounds like, how about every leftist man I know, I've never heard him say the word abortion until this week. How about me getting death threats because I went on Twitter and said, yeah, I had an abortion, it made my life better, and I wanted it and I needed it, and it was from having casual sex and fucking up, birth control fucking up, and I'm allowed to do that, and it's fine. And I was told that it was divisive, that I was pushing too far, just by telling the truth about my own life.
Telling your story.
And surprise, surprise, here we are. When the discourse has been defined by people who were afraid to talk about it or people who were trying to strip us of this right. So anyway, personal storytelling to me is, if you go to shoutyourabortion.com, it's just story after story after story. And it's a little bit harder to look people in the face and take their rights away when you know who they are and you think of them as a human being. They still do it because they don't care and they're evil, but but it's a little harder. And I have heard from people who said, I used to be anti-choice and then I read through some of these stories and I understand now. And like, I have sympathy, people who are raised in hyper-religious communities and people who, you know, grew up with the stigma, people are afraid of losing their families. I understand, but it's really bad. It's really bad.
Yeah.
I'm really, the other thing that made me mad was the guy that really made me mad was there was like a guy who described himself as pro-life on the Roe panel yesterday, which, no thanks, I'll pass on listening to him talk, but he said this thing that I feel like was so crystallizes this whole issue, which is, he was like, well, we have to acknowledge that, you know, a little over a year from now, there will be little toddlers walking around who are only here because their parents couldn't have their abortion appointments because Roe was overturned. And it's like, those are hypothetical people. Those people, they don't exist. You know, like, that's not real. I'm real. I exist now. It's so cruel to have this like concept of an imaginary fucking baby, you know? And that's your priority. And then he was like, yeah, he was like, I just really hope that, like, yeah, I know that this is gonna devastate a lot of, you know, under-resourced families. And I just hope that the increased visibility of those families is going to inspire a lot more charitable giving. Oh my God, what a system. Are you insane? Are you insane? Yeah, definitely the most marginalized and the most discriminated against and the most stigmatized people in the world should rely on the largesse of rich white people to decide who's worth giving money to. It's almost as though we already have a system to take care of people. It's called the government, and we could just use it to do that. Anyway, sorry.
No.
I always say something like big, and then I undermine it right at the end by being like, sorry, like a little mouse, which is not good feminism. Don't do that.
You have some thoughts. You know, you've been experiencing the festival, and you have some thoughts. So yes, those are welcome. But I mean, yeah, I think whether we're talking about abortion, no matter what we're talking about, like this current moment feels like just this rejection of somebody else being able to determine who or what is beautiful or who or what gets to weigh in on our bodies, and more of a self-defined declaration of beauty. I'm wondering if you agree with that, and you started to talk about this, but if you do agree, why that is an important shift.
The shift from other people defining.
Yes.
I mean, it just feels like basic ownership over your body. Ownership, and that's why, you know, I don't go around telling women like not to get plastic surgery if they want to, or not to wear makeup, or not. I'm interested in less restrictions on what women do with their bodies or how they decide to express themselves through clothing or makeup or whatever. You know, like what's important is dismantling imposed, oppressive, mandatory beauty standards, making that the metric for who's valuable in society and who's ignored and who's trash, and then. I love clothes. I love beauty and fashion, even though I can hold the complicated notion that what makes me happy beauty-wise is definitely I'm getting some kind of like reward from being at least like adjacent to what's acceptable in the system. Like, that's why that's part of the process, is dismantling that system so we can broaden this more and more and more all the time. It's just freedom. It's self-determination, yes. Self-actualization, and it's really, really hard, especially for those of us who don't hold the majority of institutional power, to even feel like we know who we are. You are so confined by the roles of who you should be and what you should do and what a good life looks like, what a happy life looks like, and that's not real. It's different for every single one of us, and this all feels like the same thing to me.
Yeah.
Deciding, and this was a thing that happened to me during the pandemic. It was like all the trappings of my life that I thought were like the exciting good parts of my life were gone. Like, I used to travel all the time, and I used to, have this sort of like big exciting life, and pandemic started, and I realized I had been miserable in a lot of ways, and having like society shut down and like the perception of me taken away, it just really taught me a lot, even though it's obviously been horrific. But like, yeah, I think I just think, yeah, what I said.
Yeah, look, claiming and defining beauty for ourselves, I mean, it does matter, right? I mean,
yeah.
and not worrying about what other people have to say about
mean,
whatever choices we are making, right?
Like, fuck
I dyed
you,
my hair blonde. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Deal with it. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, we're back out here.
You look incredible.
Thank you.
I mean, it really, yeah, claiming beauty for yourself.
Yeah, but that's
it's just like saying, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me, or whatever, you know?
That part. But like the ownership piece, I think is such an important point that you are making. Well, despite our, determination to do that for ourselves, there is, like I said, this ugliness in our country right now that is driven by this divisiveness and rancor, and frankly, people who feel emboldened to express their opinions about their neighbors or strangers or fellow travelers on the internet. Or
and not just express their opinions, but once those opinions are validated, take that a step further and start imposing their opinions as law and controlling other people's lives. I'm not Christian. I don't, the idea, I mean, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it's okay.
The concept of like even when life begins, that's a theological concept. And now somehow it's imposed upon my life, this Christian idea of when life begins. Fuck off. I don't believe in, I don't know, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder like we just heard of what you make of this ugliness, but like, how are the rest of us supposed to respond to this ugliness? And what does it mean when, as a society, we are unable to really see the beauty, within each other? I mean, forget about this part, but just the beauty within each person.
I mean, I would ask everyone to be brave, especially if you're a person with a lot of power and privilege and influence and money, and listen to other people and seek out other perspectives, and be kind to people, take care of people in your community, follow leaders that are already there doing the work. You don't need to reinvent any wheels, and I don't know. I mean, I'm very confused by people who don't see the beauty in everyone. It doesn't seem complicated to me. But obviously I know we're all indoctrinated into this culture where, I grew up only seeing, thin white models and actresses and singers. And I mean, what's hilarious to me is like the idea that like, somehow we've like convinced ourselves that only the hottest people are good at acting. Like, why do just like models get to be actors, and we're like, oh, they're so good at acting. Like, everyone in a movie has to be hot. It's weird. It's just weird. But you can do whatever you want. I like looking at hot people, but it's weird. You gotta admit it's weird. It's like if we were like, oh, only hot people are good CEOs. Like, well, why? What? And anyway, they would never do that because people think that hot people are stupid, which is a whole other thing. But
you
anyway.
can't be hot and smart, and you can't be,
I mean, but of course we know that you can.
Yes.
Anyway, we're just disproving it every day. I forgot what the question was. How do we see the beauty in everyone?
And I guess kind of on a related note, before we open it up to all of you, is, in this moment, what is your advice for how to be a beauty rebel? How to be rebellious in your notions of beauty? What do you say to people?
I just think always look inward rather than outward. Like, what do I actually want to do? What do I want to wear? What feels good? Like, I mean, these are ridiculous.
No,
I'm wearing like giant Barbie shoes for a baby, but I don't care. They're great. They make me so happy. They make me 9 feet tall because I'm already tall. I don't care. It's great. I like feeling tall and huge. Same. And I step into an elevator with a man and he's like, that's delightful to me. Look inward, not like try to think about like what will gain you approval, but what will make you happy. That's brave, and that signals to other people that they can be themselves and be safe. And also, oh no, what was I gonna say? I had two. Oh God,
it's pandemic brain.
I had COVID like 2 months ago, and I swear my brain is not normal. I can't remember anything. It's really bad. Well, anyway, just like do what you want. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. it is always better to have been like mildly embarrassed. Like yesterday, a lady like fully made fun of my shoes in the hotel. Like I stepped out of the elevator and this older lady looked me up and down and went, ha ha, like laughed in my face. And then her husband like was like, pfft, and he goes, hi there. Anyway, fine, who fucking cares? Like it's so much better to be mildly embarrassed, which I was not, but you know, a younger me would have been, than to be like regretful because you didn't express yourself and you played a role, you let people force you into a role that isn't you. I mean, you know, that's the worst feeling.
Yeah.
And it's disempowering and it's corrosive to the soul. And it also like, so there's like a trend on like TikTok and Instagram right now called maximalism, which I am so into. It's where you just wear every print at the same time and you cover yourself with jewels and ruffles.
My mom's a pioneer.
Right? I know, like the idea that this is a new trend, like come on. But I cannot get enough. Just, it's the same, like I had this realization the other day, like, oh, if I can ever afford to own a home, we'll see, not in Seattle, but I want to be the weird person in the neighborhood who paints their house like turquoise. I'm sorry, why do we everyone paints their house white or yellow or blue or whatever, baby blue? It's so boring and weird, and it's a weird conformity that we all agreed on when literally you could paint your house any color. Yeah. And it's weird that I just figured that out at age 40.
Listen, I mean, if I've learned nothing else in the pandemic, it is do the most.
Yeah.
Right? And as far as I'm concerned, being a beauty rebel is exactly what you're describing. It's about taking up space and you know, not making yourself smaller for the comfort of others. So
yeah, we should have talked about taking up space this whole time. That's such a good angle. Take up space. Unapologetically.
Hour 2 of the, no, I'm just kidding. No, but listen, if there's anybody that has a question, there are people with microphones that will come over to you and let you ask Lindy whatever it is that you want to know before we get out of here. So let's start right here with you in the jean jacket. Hi.
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 So my name is Sakshi, and I am actually a dermatologist practicing in Manhattan. I do not do anything aesthetic. Purely medical dermatology, complex med derm, because I really think that to a large extent, dermatologists, plastic surgeons, or whoever is in the aesthetic industry are responsible for this notion of beauty that sort of says that the perfect person is like the size 0 to 4, 6, you know, hourglass shape with like pouty lips, and they all look the same, and it's awful. I mean, no offense to those who do it, it's awful. And then I have patients, you know, my patients who I see, and then they come and see me, and they ask me about fillers, Botox, and I'm like, do it if you want to do it for yourself, kind of similar to what you said. Do not do it because you saw it on Instagram.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, do what makes you feel happy. You want to get big boobs? Sure, but do it because you want them. Yeah. And understand what the implications of that surgery is and what the post-op care is. Right. The other thing is I really blame the fashion industry because, you know, every model is, you know, size 0. And they kind of throw in somebody with vitiligo, somebody who's a plus size model, and they try to get kudos on their back just because they're trying to be inclusive. That is not inclusive. If you look around yourself, I mean, there are women of all shapes and sizes. The fashion industry is not reflective of women that exist. And we, unfortunately, as consumers, are allowing that to happen.
Yeah.
So the fault really lies in us as a society collectively to really make a change, to scream loud, and to actually boycott the industry, which is perpetuating this particular stereotype of a perfect woman.
Yeah, I mean, this is a radical thing that people have a hard time with, but you can, for one easy thing to do as, you know, thinner people, you can not shop at stores that don't carry plus sizes until they agree to carry plus sizes. I mean, a thing, you know, which I'm so sorry for that, for future for you, because there's like no stores. It sucks. But the also another thing that a lot of times like fashion lines will have like one plus size model on the runway that they like squeeze into one of their dresses so they can get kudos, and then that dress doesn't actually exist in plus sizes.
No. When you try to go buy it, it's like, yeah, good luck.
No, there's so many brands that claim to be size inclusive that only go up to a 3X or a 26. And there are people, human beings, who are actually a larger size than that and also need clothes. It's such a fucked up, complicated conversation. I also want to say that thank you for bringing this up. another thing you reminded me of was that we haven't talked about is the way that the beauty industry saps women, especially saps our financial power. I mean, the amount of money we're expected to spend on cosmetic procedures, clothes, and makeup, and like
all of it.
Yeah, and
social media pushing that, right, and telling you what you should have, what you must have if you were going to be part of what is considered beautiful.
Yeah, and if we're going to live like squashed under this capitalist regime, money, it matters, and it matters who has more money, and it matters who's wasting all their money chasing this absolutely impossible ideal that we'll never actually get to, and that doesn't actually get you real respect in the world.
Yeah, because likes do not equate real respect. We've got another question right here. Hi.
Sorry. Hello, my name is Simone. I am a body liberation activist, content creator, and I'm so appreciative to be in this space because I talk about this a lot. So I have like a three-pronged question, and I talk about this a lot on like my platforms as well. One being that the body positive, the term is kind of antiquated now because the people who are the kind of the poster children for it are now like thinner white women. So a lot of people have been moving to body liberation, fat acceptance, fat liberation, which I'm so here for. So I would love to hear your opinion on that. And also the fact that the original body positive movement was founded by Black, fat, queer women, So when talking about body positivity or just the movement of accepting bodies, a lot of times, especially darker-skinned, visibly plus-size fat women have kind of been pushed to the back.
Yep,
so when I talk about these things, a lot of times they're like, "You're not being body positive. There's a limit to what body positive is, and you're not this." So it's like, but literally, people who look like me created this shit. So I'd love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you should. I'd love to hear your perspective on it some more.
But body positive, like that seems like an oxymoron. But yes, continue.
Yeah, I mean, you're just exactly right about. I mean, everything that she said. Yeah, I mean, I think, of course, body positivity is so vague and it's so bland. And yes, of course, everyone has a body. It is difficult to have every body. We're all struggling under the same system. I mean, I get a lot of hostility from people who aren't fat because they've struggled every day to not be fat, which is torture, to work all your life to be thin so that you feel like you can have some like shred of power or approval, and you've been taught that that's your life's goal, your life's purpose as a woman. Like I understand, like that is incredibly oppressive. But I mean, I usually say fat liberation when I'm talking about fat people, but body liberation includes disabled people. I mean, there's so much more to the idea of liberating bodies. I mean, I don't know what else to say except that you're right. And of course, body positivity was so easily co-opted, snapped up by, size 14 white women to post bikini pictures and be like, yeah.
Hashtag body positive.
Yeah, I have one role that I can And I don't want to make fun of those people. Like they're on their own journey, and that is important. And if I was 13 years old and I saw a size 16 woman, I would have been like, oh my God. But it's not the finish line. Again, like if we're talking about body liberation, that means all bodies. And so that means you need to start by listening to the people who are most impacted, which is Black women, visibly plus-size women, like you said. I mean, women who can't go to the store and buy clothes, women who can't get medical care. I mean, like, the idea, and this is what's so insidious about body positivity as a movement, is that it just narrows that down so much to like, here's a picture of me in my bikini, which is important in its own little way, but it's not liberatory in any kind of a meaningful, substantial way. But yeah, white women always steal everything from Black women and say that it's ours and that we invented it and then push Black women out. So I just would like to acknowledge that and honor that. And if you're interested in if you're interested in like this body liberation as a movement, fat liberation, look to Black women. Do some actual research into the origins of the movement and like do the work and actually learn about it, and don't just take, it's so easy for people to take really easy, to do things sort of symbolically and performatively rather than substantively. And to claim like, oh, look at me, I'm being body positive. Like, well, I don't know, do you make fun of people for having diabetes? Like, you know, what kind of jokes do you laugh at? Do you, how do you spend your money? How do you treat people?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, hijacking, not part of the not part of the Beauty Rebellion movement. I think we may have time for one more, and then we're gonna wrap up. Did anybody else have a question?
Hi, this has been great. I have a question about the concept and your philosophy of liberalizing the concept of beauty or redefining the concept of beauty rather than just rejecting it as a metric. Will you talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer. Like, it's like, because I don't know. What is this? It's like, I have at times, like, it doesn't feel good to me to like go out looking like shit. But I know that metric, do I look like shit or do I not look like shit, is based on this evil system that I organize my life around like railing against. So I think the answer is just, you can do both. Like, wear what makes you happy, what makes you feel good, and make small steps toward like, don't buy into the diet industry. Don't constantly be trying to make yourself smaller. Don't praise smaller bodies over bigger bodies. Watch how you talk in front of your children. Watch how you talk to yourself. And also just be cognizant of when you're being influenced and controlled, and then pick the parts that you actually want, and gradually we will move further and further away from coercive beauty standards and towards something that we built ourselves, which can still be beautiful and can still contain elements of old systems, but I mean, to me, it's really tough, because how do you know when you're being controlled and when you're not? And I don't know. And like, obviously, I'm like wearing makeup, and I don't know, like, I want to be pretty. And like I said, people are nicer to you when you're pretty. I understand why it's absolutely impossible to break out of that cycle. People are horrible to you. If you're a woman, you're nothing. Nothing. Unless you jump through all these hoops to be beautiful. So, I mean, I guess maybe it comes back to community again. Surround yourself with people who are interested in the same kind of liberatory work. I don't know, what do you think?
I think that you are really leading by example and showing us what it is to be rebellious and beautiful, and that matters, because at the end of the day, what this is about, this in the work that you do, in the stories that we tell, it is about afflicting the comfortable. That is what it means to be beautiful and to claim beauty.
Yeah.
And for people who try to impose beauty standards, that is about their comfort.
Oh yeah.
And we reject that.
Definitely like reject and mock and be mean to all men who try to tell you what to wear, how to look, what to do with your body. Just mock them mercilessly and destroy them. Sorry, I mean, like, of all the people to like, I mean, like, if you ever venture into the, like, dark parts of the internet where it's like, men talking about, like, what's a 10, and like, oh, I went on a internet date with this girl and she turned out to be fat, or whatever. If you meet anyone like that in your life, crush them, destroy them. Laugh in their face. Like, that is, I don't know what I'm saying.
Because they're ugly no matter how they look on the outside. Well, listen, Lindy, thank you for taking up all the space in all the places. We so appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I so appreciate this conversation. Thanks to all of you.